Welcome to the Real Recovery Show. Our episodes air every Friday at noon, and you can catch us on YouTube, and you can go up to our website, themeetingspace.com, and you can see all of our episodes. Today's episode is one that really speaks to a hidden part of my own personal recovery. It's something I have never spoken on any of these shows about doing, and but yet in preparing for this, I started to become really in gratitude and amazement for how much this particular topic has helped me. So they say that the fear of public speaking is second only to the fear of death. And I mean, there are so many people who are just afraid to speak one-on-one with another person, and especially in a vulnerable way. But in a group setting, I've talked to many people who would call the recovery store and they wanted to go to their first meeting and they're terrified. Never mind the fact that they might have been doctors or whoever out in the world, but now they're going to go to their first meeting and admit that they have a problem and that they need help. And this is just terrifying to admit to a group. And so I would always tell them, just go and listen. Just go and listen. You don't have to do anything. And I would tell them what to expect in a meeting from soup to nuts. And so when they go there, they're already having a sense of familiarity, and they're able to feel comfortable knowing, okay, this is what she said, and feel a sense of ease with that. I was an incredibly shy kid. I know that doesn't, if you know me and you've seen all these shows, you know I could talk. But I was incredibly shy. I had a very difficult time. I had making friends, and if I was called on in class, I would get immediate anxiety attacks. And I'm already white. I'm already as white as you can get. Like, I glow in the dark white, but I would get even whiter. Like, I would be, whoo, and over time, through being a stripper, I learned to have a lot more confidence and used that, and that helped me a lot. It's crazy how much that industry helped me to gain a sense of confidence in that way. But speaking, and sharing, if I had somebody one-on-one, I could tell them my life story if I wanted something from them, but it was always from that perspective. But then when I got into recovery, I sat in the back of the room, my very first event that I went to, and there was 50, 60 people, and I was overwhelmed by how much energy there was in that room. And I was not going to speak. I just was going to listen. Nobody told me I needed to just do that. I was not going to speak. In fact, I talked somebody else into going to it for them. But I was really going for me. And they never went after that. And I heard things. I heard people sounding like they were comfortable in their own skin, and they were speaking and laughing about things that were not funny to me at the time. They were talking about their past and what they had been through, as if it didn't even have a charge anymore, and that they saw the humor in it. They were happy, and I wanted what they had. It was from listening to people sharing that they had a solution, not telling me I have a solution, but actually I could see it, I could feel it. I could see the difference between how I felt and how they seemed to be, and it was so inviting for me, and I felt at home. And over the years, I didn't know this. I didn't know this, but over time, there's this thing that happens in recovery where we, little by little, no matter how much we think that we are needing to get over our fear of people or our fear of public or groups or authority figures or anything, we don't really know how much of that's one of our issues. But almost every time I hear somebody tell their story, they talk about how alcohol and drugs made them feel like they could say what they needed to say and do what they needed to do and be comfortable in their own skin and not be so self-conscious. You know, and why is public speaking such a big fear? Because we're so self-conscious. Who do I need to be? How do I need to sound? What do I need to look like? What do I need to accomplish? If I'm wanting to help people, am I really helping people? If I'm wanting to entertain people, how do I make them laugh? Like, it's so much, you know, and it's very easy to go into our heads and be so self-conscious and like, you know, kick up the snow globe of our own insecurities and like be caught up in our own stuff and be like, maybe tomorrow. I mean, I'm not going to do that today. So what I find so interesting is how, without necessarily a formal, hey, come to recovery, get sober, get clean and sober off of drugs and alcohol or whatever your behavior is or whatever. And while you're here, you're going to actually be more and more comfortable speaking. I mean, we don't even talk about that as a thing. But over time, that's what happened. You take service positions and you go up to people that you would normally not go up to people, and you hold out your hand and you introduce yourself and you get over your fear, one fear at a time, and you start getting more and more comfortable in recovery, interacting with other people and seeing that you're not less than or greater than, and yet everybody does this at their own pace, and some people are really still, they could be 20 years clean and sober, afraid to speak. And no shame in this. Everybody's healing different things, right? We're all healing. We're all having our own hodgepodge of stuff to heal. But oftentimes I'm one of the people that speaks maybe a little bit too much, too often, like, oh, she's speaking again kind of thing. And then there are lots of people that I used to feel bad because I was one of the people that spoke a lot. And then I realized when the room was silent, they wouldn't speak anyway because they liked that somebody else was doing it. And while maybe they were getting a lot out of listening, and that's great, but how much of it is that they are not owning their own voice? And so today's topic is so much about that, owning your own voice, feeling comfortable and confident in your own skin, and tools that are available that you may not even be aware of to help you really get over whatever that stuff is that stops you from being able to do that. Whether you're in meetings or any kind of programs or anything, or you're just wanting to heal from that and level up in your work or your social settings, or just because you personally want to be able to do that. The fear of public speaking can be really powerful. I have spoken in a seat in an audience and then ended up standing up and going across the room to be behind a podium, and the energy and the fear level behind a podium is quite different than just sitting in a group where you're just like heads, next to each other. And so I'm even doing the show. When I first started the show, I had some fears. I needed it to be perfect. I was so afraid. And then Johan, the owner of the radio station, said, no, people like when you make mistakes because it makes you look more human and you're more relatable. And I was like, oh my God, I bet you say that to all the people, but thank you so much for saying that to me, And so the last thing I'll say is, years ago, I had a radio show in my pajamas on the internet, and no video. And I had been in multimedia production for years before that, so I knew how to edit. And I did this one talk, and this talk was so good. And so I edited it, but I wanted to take out all the ums, all the likes, and I took an hour and a half recording, and it got down to 45 minutes because I took out all the ums and the likes. And I felt this I do it again, this shame hit. And I wanted a solution. I was like, because people were asking me to speak. They were flying me places. I was doing workshops. I was going to be, I felt like the trajectory was, I was going to be speaking more and more. I had conferences lined up, one in Iceland. And I was like, oh my God, they want me even with my ums and my likes. And I said, I have to do something about this. So while I've been doing this show, I've been thinking about how interesting that I'm back to saying and like. Now, if you go and watch any of the other episodes, you're not going to be able to unhear it. You will hear me do that. I will do it several times in this episode, even though my ego wants to be even more aware of it because we're talking and we're drawing attention to it. But I've been talking to my friend Carlos about having Toastmasters at the meeting space, and my friend Nadia, who you're not going to see yet, but you're going to see on this episode, and we're so excited because what a way to give a huge tool to people in recovery. And so it's helped me. I've seen people, it's helped a lot. I know one person who had severe panic disorder and very, very, very shy and insecure. And this person has been doing Toastmasters for years as an adjunct to being in other kinds of recovery. And that person has healed so much and is more confident. I feel, even to the point where I feel like it saved that person's life because that person needed to feel like they had a valid voice and they felt so insignificant, and just to see the energy change in it. And so we're going to start off talking to my friend Carlos Quintero.
Yes.
Okay. And I have a thing about pronouncing names, and I'm so excited when I do it right. And we're going to talk about, just, you're in recovery. You, how long have you been clean and sober off of drugs and alcohol?
Well, my sobriety date is October 26th of 2018, so I am about 4 years and 10 months.
And I've known you pretty much all of it.
Yes.
Yes. That's really cool. I
Yes.
love that. And I've seen a big change in you. And so, but part of the change is because you also do Toastmasters, right?
Yes.
So when did you start doing Toastmasters?
So on and off, this will be my second round of Toastmasters. I actually started before sobriety,
Okay.
before I got clean and sober, and that was about 8 years ago. And I went through work, and that's how I got introduced to the Toastmasters Club. And I really enjoyed the group setting and how everyone really kept it positive, and they wanted to see each other grow and become better. And it was a safe space for you to be able to practice public speaking without feeling humiliated or criticized.
Right.
And that's what I loved.
Because
And
that is really true. I think everybody's so afraid, even in recovery, of talking about their stuff because they're so afraid of being judged.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so I remember that feeling. And then years later, I got into recovery, and slowly I started to become more confident in speaking in front of the group. Because as confident as I am, I also did not do well with speaking in front of people because I felt so intimidated. I saw these people with so many years of recovery, and I was like, well, I don't even know what to say. And I just need to sit down and listen like yourself. And so now that I'm in Toastmasters again, through work again.
And when did
and
you go back into Toastmasters this
so
time?
this was recently. We actually just opened up a club, reopened a club for the company I work for about, I would say it's going to be about 5 or 6 months now.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, so the company you work for started a charter.
Well, they already
Oh,
had one
okay.
Previous to COVID, and then
Oh, and
like
they
a lot of
reopened
things.
it.
Yes, they.
Ah, how
So
interesting.
yes, I met someone while volunteering, and she happened to bring it up, and she's an amazing person and has been a great leader and has helped me through how to be a leader in Toastmasters. So it's a little different for me now
Yeah.
because before I was more of the person that would show up every once in a while to being an officer in Toastmasters,
And
which
your
is
whole demeanor, I mean, your confidence, being able to like own your seat, and have that kind of presence. A big part of it has to do with that.
yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
granted, in recovery, I mean, we go through a whole metamorphosis of we have to really get vulnerable and make peace with things about ourselves, and that gives us an era of like owning our life, owning our
Yes.
story. But it's to me, I feel like if you've ever heard of Toastmasters, look it up and then come to the meeting space because we're going to be doing it there too, and try it. So what were you like when you were growing up? Just a little bit about that you feel led you to be maybe more likely to use drugs and alcohol, and then why did you end up going into recovery, and then we'll take it into Toastmasters.
Okay. I wasn't sure
But
we were
you're
going
going
to
to
go
have to
into
do
that.
that in like this amount of
Yes.
time. So
So,
go.
so I was already very familiar with drugs and alcohol because I came from a dysfunctional family who abused both, right? So having that single parent and absentee father really was a great recipe for me becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol. And so that was my solution because that was my mom's solution. And so that is what I knew to run to when I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I learned it, and it was already, I felt already genetically there because of my before I was born, my mom was already an addict. So it was already, it was meant to
Nature
be.
versus nurture. Yeah.
Yes.
You grew up in it. You were born by somebody who had it. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, being able to define myself later on in life as an alcoholic or an addict was very, very difficult because I never wanted to be like my mom.
Right.
And so, I judged and criticized until I was old enough to realize I had done the same mistakes. And being able to find recovery after hitting a bottom was the biggest blessing of my life. And then that's when the real growth started. And it's still taking time, right? And it's always a growing process. It's never over. And so, yes, that's
When you were first in recovery, did you were you afraid to speak up at recovery events initially?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the part that I was afraid of was what to say, because I've always liked attention.
Yeah.
I've always loved
I know, isn't
attention.
that
So,
crazy?
like,
It's like there's some of the biggest attention whores are people like
yes,
are not speaking
absolutely.
in a meeting, and it's like you gotta be kidding.
Yes,
Like I would have somebody even on the show, and I'm thinking this person is gonna talk the whole way, and then it's no, and I'm like, wow, I never would have thought that was gonna happen, but yeah. So you were nervous.
I was very nervous. I didn't, I couldn't go into a group or a program without the help of people. So a rehabilitation center that helped introduce me to a specific program that was right for me.
Yeah.
That was the only way I was able to actually just get into
Right.
a program. I was so scared, and then let alone get up and speak in front of them or say, hey, my name's Carlos. I'm an addict or an alcoholic was a start, but again,
Right.
it took years for me to start knowing what to say that was going to be because I didn't want it to just be a story about my past. I wanted it to be
Yeah.
meaningful and help people, and so I needed to be
So you feel like
strategic.
maybe it's the pressure you put on yourself,
Yes,
like it had to be perfect and it had to be wise and it
absolutely.
had to be blowing everybody's mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned, because I also had that in spades, was that the three things with the speech is there's the speech that you plan to give, there's the speech that you give, and there's the speech that you wish you gave that you're criticizing yourself on the whole way home. And I did that. I would always do that. I wouldn't listen to anybody else. I would think about what I was going to say, and then I would say the thing, but it wasn't what I really wanted to say. It's in my head, and then I would go, oh, I should have said that, or oh, did I really say it that way, or whatever. And what a mess. I'm missing the whole point of being there in the first place.
Right.
And what I learned was to get out of the idea of, so basically, I'll say it like this. I can experience my life in one of two ways. I can experience it from the outside in or the inside out. If I experience it from the outside in, I am so concerned with you and everybody else and what I'm supposed to do to help and what I'm supposed to do to entertain and what I look like, what I seem like, and what I
Yes.
need to sound like, and da da da. And all of that, while I may have some really good stuff to say, I'm not coming from a humble place where I am letting go of the results. And so I may not hear the message in what I'm saying. But if I first seek to just be honest and to just come from that space within and just trust that whatever it is I'm supposed to say is what I'm supposed to say, something shifts and I focus on what I'm saying rather than on being the person saying it and who I'm saying it to. And something happens. In that sense of being honest and being intuitive, I tune into and I join with the other people, and I'm comfortable and I'm sharing my own truth, which is very
Yes.
unthreatening for other people. I'm not talking at them, trying to change them. So if I never had that job in the first place of trying to like get everybody to understand the thing, then I'm not going to come from that egoic place of coming from the outside in. And then all I need to do is just be honest and just focus on what I'm saying.
Yes.
And it's an amazing little tip or trick that shifts my headspace, that's all I'm really here to do. But I did that too for so long, which is why I needed to learn that
Yes.
too. And even still, I'll say to this day, every once in a while, I will be caught up in the energy of an event and
Yes.
everybody's speaking and everybody's getting to the podium, and I'll be like, okay, like a game. What am I going to share about? And then I'll be like, okay. It's not about you. Should I share? Should I even share? And then what really resonates, and then just share focused on that. And then as soon as I get that feeling like that's enough, stop.
Yes.
Right? And these are the things that we learn as we go. It's not like this big competition.
Right. I love that you said that. It's not a competition.
Right.
And I used to feel like for some people it is well, how can I make my speech or my message better than the previous person, because I don't know how I'm going to compare, or I don't know how I'm going to be compared to the previous person, when it's in reality, like you said, I love that you said that, it just, whatever comes from your heart, whatever you want to say is fine. And that's what I do when I speak in front of a group, is I speak from the heart and whatever's going on for me at that time. I have had a few situations where I've gotten feedback on how I was speaking in a program and what I was saying, and it was very impactful. Now I feel that, was that person correct? I don't know, but was it feedback that I needed? I think so. And it's okay to get some feedback. I was afraid of it and I
Mm-hmm.
was embarrassed,
Mm-hmm.
but it made me a better person, and realizing that maybe sometimes it's not the best to speak on something that you're necessarily going through in the moment. It just really just depends.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for everything, and I love that you said you select on how much you speak and what you speak about, and should I even do it?
And I also love how synergistic Toastmasters and recovery is anyway, because you are in essence wanting to keep improving, just like you are in recovery, but you're wanting to improve more technical things.
Yes.
It's not that you're trying to become worthy of speaking. You're just, maybe in my case, for example, saying and like a lot. Maybe you just really want to stop doing that. Maybe you want to be more polished. Maybe you have a very difficult time making eye contact. How do you learn how to do that? Maybe maybe you have a hard time memorizing things and you want to be able to say something and you want to be able to practice. Maybe you have exaggerated stories of how bad you think you're doing, and maybe you need loving feedback to let you know where your strengths are so that you can have more of a comfortable experience in speaking. But it's just like in recovery with the slogan, progress not perfection. When we're really doing Toastmasters for the right reasons, the only one we're ever in competition with is ourselves.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and we don't need to be this critical voice to ourselves. We can learn to be more of loving towards ourselves, because in Toastmasters, and this I could attest to, that in Toastmasters, just like in recovery, there are so many people that they're also facing their fears. They're also polishing their speech. They're also wanting to do better, but they want you to do well for you. And there's no shame. There's no criticism that's negative. It's all positive, constructive,
Yes.
along the lines of the book, of the different types of speeches, of the expectation of what it is that we're doing, like whatever it is that we're needing to accomplish in that particular type of speech, whether or not, however we're doing it. And then to be able to like put that kind of energy into it and have people notice the things that we're actually putting into it, but also in a loving way, let us know. So here's where you're doing this, and you might want to this. And so people sharing, just like in recovery, their experience, strength, and hope to help you. There's just, I find this whole conversation so powerful because Toastmasters, recovery, we're getting over our self-consciousness.
Yes.
We're getting over this crippling perfectionism, like just this insecurity of like who we think we need to be lovable, to be accepted, and why do we want to be so accepted? We have fears of abandonment, and we want to be part of a group, and we want to feel like we belong, right? So here's this crazy thing that happens in recovery and Toastmasters. Without being perfect, we get to experience that we are accepted and that we're part of a group without being perfect.
Yes.
And we get to have the room to make mistakes.
I love that.
And in a dysfunctional childhood where parents are alcoholics or addicts, right?
Yes.
Or even if they're not alcoholics or addicts, there's so much of you can't screw up.
Right.
It's so rigid. Even if it's to complete chaos, like in my family's case, there's so much judgment.
Yes. Exactly.
And so we have it internalized, right? We don't want to be like our mother. We don't want to be like our father or whatever. It's that we have all this internalized crap. And so here to be able to, act and like, it's like an expectorant. Doing this behavior gets it out, and it allows us to face it and to walk through it and to become empowered.
Yes.
That's why I love when people start speaking up in recovery events alone, when that they've been like crippled.
Yes.
And you think, wow, and you encourage them, and people encourage them. But if you're wanting like another loving environment that can help you to get over some of your fears of speaking in a group, and you don't have to want to speak at a podium or go tour or anything like that. But just if you're wanting help with that, like there's another thing that you can do in addition to what you're doing with recovery that could really help you to get over some of this stuff, and that's Toastmasters.
And one thing I wanted to add, a thought that I had about the difference between Toastmasters and speaking in recovery, is that in Toastmasters, you get the feedback.
Yeah.
And in a group,
true.
in a program, you do not get the feedback.
Not that kind of feedback.
Not that kind of feedback.
No.
And I just thought about that now. I was like, wait a minute. What is it that
So
Toastmasters gives that the groups don't? Is the good feedback that we need to be better, right? Because not everyone is going to be all open and honest with you like that person was to me that one
about
time.
their opinion.
And it was difficult. And
it's their opinion.
Yes, it wasn't a format that they followed. It was just their opinion. So it was difficult for me to receive that.
Yeah.
And that is the challenging part about Toastmasters, that you are guaranteed to get feedback, and it's constructive feedback, and it's positive,
and it's loving.
Yes. And so I remember my first icebreaker speech was just about 3 months ago.
Icebreaker is one of the first ones you do.
Yes. Yes, the icebreaker is the first one.
Yeah.
And you just speak on something that you would like to speak on. It's a warm-up, I would say. And my speech was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. And I was so critical about myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I just said. And you know what? I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wing it. And this is my icebreaker speech. So it's not formatted, and that's how, it's just my warm up. And when I finished, my feedback was very positive. And I was sitting here thinking the worst. I was like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? This guy is a mess. But they told me how many likes and how many I said, and it was a lot. Now, mind you, I was also winging it with the meeting because I was also an officer. I was a new officer trying to start a meeting, doing my icebreaker speech, and then I was filling multiple roles because it's a new club.
Yeah.
You don't always get the participation that you would like right away. It takes time, it takes effort to get those people who are interested or maybe interested to actually come. Because it is not a free service either. It's a service that it's an investment in you. And so that's what a thing that I want to say or emphasize on is that Toastmasters it's an investment in yourself, And if you look at it like that, you can grow way beyond your limits. Because we are limited on how much we can grow within ourselves by ourselves, right? And just like a program, we need
Right.
a group
Right.
to make us stronger, and
Right.
that's what I feel Toastmasters does for
And
me.
it's very structured. Just like if somebody was to go to like a 12-step program, there's 12 steps, there's literature, there's stuff to follow, there's stuff to go back to. With Toastmasters, there's book,
Yes.
there's different levels that you could do, different
Pathways.
speeches you do, and there's how the group is supposed to behave when people are speaking, like how they're supposed to be writing stuff down and giving their feedback and stuff like that. And you get to go at your own pace. You get to pick your own speeches. You get to pick your own topics, and whatever it is that you're wanting to work on, it's your own thing. And so, yeah. So what did you feel like? You feel like in the years that you've now been like dedicated to your recovery, and the years that and the time that you've spent now reinvested in Toastmasters, what do you feel the change has been for you?
That is a great question. The change in me is the level of service that I want to bring to Toastmasters. So being in recovery now teaches me how to be of service and be
Oh,
there for
interesting.
others. So now in Toastmasters, I don't want to just be there. I want to
yourself.
help. Exactly.
Yes.
And so now I can go in there and actually be a leader, an officer, and I want to say it takes work. And I've had a couple of coworkers who went into the roles thinking this is something I can just add to my resume and it'll
Yeah.
look beautiful, and I don't have to do a lot of work.
Right.
Very wrong.
Oh, no. No.
The Toastmasters Club we're going to open as well.
Yeah.
It is going to be the same. It's going
Yeah.
to take work and time out of our own lives, out of our own personal lives. Now, but again, it's for our professional
Because you
development.
prepare. It's not even just for a professional, but even that, like say that, let's say you don't have to speak at your job. There's
right.
nothing that you need to do, but maybe you want to be able to have the confidence to be able to apply for a job.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have to speak much in your social life, but maybe you're single and you want to meet people and you want to feel a little bit more confident.
That's
you know?
a great way to put it.
Maybe you want to help people, and maybe in the right settings you feel comfortable to be able to share your experience, strength, and hope, but maybe you don't have the confidence to go up to a person and to hold out your hand and give them your number and really talk to them. Maybe you've been asked to speak,
Yes.
and maybe you've been like, I don't know if I'm available, but maybe you're available for everything else, but you're not available for this. It's very powerful what happens when we sincerely want to face our fears, and it's not unique to addicts and alcoholics to be afraid to speak, to share, to join, to be vulnerable. Like I said in the beginning of this, it is the second strongest fear. The first is death. So if normies, people who have never picked up a drink, never done a drug, and they exist at all. Anybody who's not had any problem with any kind of codependency or anything, that they too have fears of speaking and different types of fears, And I'll say this last thing: you could be somebody who's had confidence about speaking, but maybe there's certain types of ways that you don't feel confident in speaking. Maybe you're always the class clown and you can make everybody laugh, but maybe you always default to that because you don't have another tool,
Yes.
to speak. And so thank you so much
You're
for sharing
welcome.
that. Right now we're going to go to our break, and then we'll come back and we'll share some more, and we will speak to you in a bit. Thank you.
Bye.
The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we could continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you who want everyone to have a place to go to heal. Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or are meant to replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. You can watch us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Amazon Fire TV. You can get our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. But the best way to reach us is just to go to themeetingspace.com. That's themeetingspace.com. Click on the Real Recovery Show, and you can see all of our episodes listed there. And there'll be updated links to all the other ways that you can listen to our show. And if you're interested in being on a future episode, just hit me up on Facebook, message me, or fill out the intake form or the contact form on the website. And so now, as you can see, we have a different guest. And her name is Nadia Gilks.
Yes.
Gilks, and so she also had some like dysfunction in her childhood and stuff like that. She never became an alcoholic or an addict, but she definitely had a lot of the the challenges of insecurities and stuff like that that it always end up coming from some sort of dysfunction in our childhood. We don't end up with like a set, strong foundation of self-confidence necessarily. And so her journey to Toastmasters, and she's like high up in the Toastmasters. So she went up. And I actually met her because they're going to have an event over at the meeting space to celebrate all the people that have accomplished great things in Toastmasters. So it's pretty cool. I had a wonderful conversation with her, and I immediately loved her. I think she's awesome. She has this natural presence to her, and which I'm sure is her innate presence, but I'm sure her experience in Toastmasters has helped to bring that out more confidence, more presence, and that's just, it's amazing. It's your walking testimonial. Yes. To that. And so share a little bit first with us, please, about maybe how it was like for you before Toastmasters, like maybe your headspace and maybe your where your life was at, and maybe your insecurities and the things that you wished you could have been better at the time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Hello to your lovely audience. My journey to Toastmasters started because I'm, like many people, a perfectionist. Surprise, surprise. Right? I like to get everything right and have everything just so. And so I did all the steps education-wise, went to school, became an attorney, and I really have always had a heart for service. So I was volunteering with the Alzheimer's Association, and I really just felt like I wasn't polished enough and I wasn't getting my speech out in the time frame that I needed to. So I really just Googled at the time, and this was 15 years ago or more.
Oh, wow.
So I just Googled at the time, because you didn't have a computer in your hand then, and just said, what can help me start speaking better? And Toastmasters came up, and I went to a meeting when I was living in Texas, and loved it. And I said, this is what I need. And I started my journey in, I think officially maybe 2010, and did that for a while and stopped. And then since I moved to Las Vegas, I've come back because I really did miss it.
It is kind of interesting. Since I've been in Toastmasters, I haven't been for several years. And like I said earlier, some of my habits have come back. But, and I knew this, like when I started this show, I knew where I was bringing back tools that I learned in Toastmasters, and was so grateful that I had done that, that I had had that kind of training, you know. And I know that Carlos had said that, you know, it's an investment in yourself, and it costs a little bit of money. It's really not that much. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much at all for what you get from it. The Toastmasters is a nonprofit,
It
right?
is.
And it just operates on it could probably use more, but I mean, like just like the meeting space is a nonprofit, they could probably use more for sure, but it's not, they're not in it for the money, they're in it to really help people to get over their insecurities and to be more empowered to be able to speak and to excel, even become public speakers, but also excel in their jobs and their work environment, because people will get more likely to get promotions, more likely to get better jobs, more likely to, if they have that kind of confidence and they exude that and they're able to get to the point and speak eloquently, like you said that you wanted to be able to do.
Yes. Yeah, it really started, well, 99 years ago. Next year we'll be celebrating our 100 year as an organization.
Wow.
And it really started with Ralph Smedley wanting people to be better communicators in their family, in their jobs, and in their faith-based organizations. So it wasn't even about trying to be the best speaker in the world or a motivational speaker or anything like that. He just really believed that learning how to get your point across, having that safe, nurturing environment where you're getting feedback, it just teaches you to be better with your spouse, which we've heard a lot of people give that feedback, or just advocating for themselves in their work or being volunteers in their faith-based organization. So it really, that was the true nature of why it started to begin with.
And so you, and you told me this in confidence, so I hope you're okay with me mentioning this, but you have struggled with some codependency stuff, right?
That's what I've learned from reading the books from last week.
Oh yeah, she came to the store and she walked out with a lot more than she thought she was going to go for.
Exactly. I came for a
I was
tour,
like,
and I was like, there's
yeah,
a
we had
whole
these big
store over
conversations,
here.
and I'm like, yeah, and then there's this. But in codependency, for me, because I've had so much codependency in my life, there is this fine tuning of what is my voice and where can I use it without being controlling and manipulative, or being self-abandoning and a doormat, you know. And so over time, to be able to get to a place where I develop a matter-of-fact voice, you know, once I know that something resonates with me, that it is what I am guided, that this is my boundary, or this is the protocol for whatever, for the store, for anything. I have become stronger in interacting with employees and with customers and with other people, because I would get first clear about what it is that's my voice, what it is it needs to be, and then to be able to say matter-of-factly, this is what it is, right? So when we have codependency, we have insecurity, we're like, who do I need to be? How do I need to sound? How do I need to do this? Because we're still perfectionistic, and we're still an overdeveloped sense of responsibility. We're still taking on more responsibility for the effect of what we're saying than the actual saying it, and staying in our own hula hoop, so to speak, right? So how has that, I know like you're going deeper now into more work on codependency, but how has Toastmasters helped you to have more of a voice and more comfortable speaking up for yourself?
Well, I've always been a little bit nervous about that. 5 years ago, I couldn't even do this. Like I wouldn't even be on video. I wouldn't even be interviewed. So it definitely just gives you the tools within and the confidence within after, like I mentioned, being in that nurturing environment. And I think just having other people's feedback, not just on my speeches, but There's a huge leadership development portion of it. And somebody told me not too long ago, I think you're addicted to self-improvement, but you don't, you don't say no. And that's really, really important to discover those boundaries. Like there was one time I was in a meeting and I obviously didn't feel good. And somebody was like, Nadia, can you serve this role? And it's like, okay. And somebody's telling me like, there's 8 people in here that don't have any role and they never do anything. You should rest, but you just give. So I think it's a great opportunity because it does become more like a family, where people are comfortable to say, okay, this is what I can see in you, that not just in a speech manner, but in a life manner, that maybe you should work on this, and this is your safe space, and it's okay to say no and learn those boundaries. So
it is a very intimate environment, because it's the same people usually that you see. I mean, some people bring new people and people who are interested. And then they'll listen. If you go to your first Toastmaster meeting, you're not going to be asked to do anything really. I mean, you may ask one little cute thing if you're open to it, but nothing. You haven't joined, you haven't been accepted into the group, and so there's not any. There's no pressure, right? Just like when you go to your first meeting, if you're going to a 12-step meeting or anything like that, there's no pressure. Just suit up and show up. Just be there and take your body, and the mind will follow. But in this environment of being vulnerable enough to get in front of a group of people that you're getting to know, and as you're getting to know them and you're doing these things and you're supporting other people, and you're seeing how nervous they are, and the stuff that they're getting over, and the criticism and how they're taking it, and then you want to give loving criticism, and you see the loving criticism is being given, and then you feel even more safe to then go and do your own speeches, because you feel more and more, you start to buy into, okay, these are safe people. This is my tribe right now. And every week or however often you go to it, you end up feeling more and more comfortable, like this is your family. And so if there is something that somebody says, you're pushing too hard, or you're too hard on yourself, or whatever like that, this is something that somebody in a loving way can just say, hey, you need to see this because we want your highest good. We want you to heal. And that's really what it's all about.
It really is. And just like Carlos mentioned a little bit earlier when he gave his icebreaker, and he was really hard on himself and he received really positive feedback. I think a lot of times we have to get over the fact that we are our worst critic, and people see different things than we see and can really, from an objective standpoint, bring out the positives in us that we might be ignoring or not giving shine to. So that's one great thing. And then when you're in Toastmasters over time, we've seen people grow tremendously, and sometimes you don't feel it within yourself. But when you hear other people say, when you first came and your knees were knocking and this was your crutch word, and now I didn't hear any crutch words 4 months down the line, or you were so comfortable, or you used the stage and actually moved around where you used to just stay in one spot. You might not even see those changes happening or think about them, but when other people point them out, then you realize how much you really are growing. And what I love to tell people is that we applaud everything. Like everything you do, you're going to get an applause from us and a yay. And, whatever you do, even your first speech, if
even
there's
if
a lot
you
of
chicken
crutch,
out.
you have a lot of those crutch words. That's just a starting point. You can grow from there. You build from there. So we applaud everyone, and we just love to nurture. I think we all have that need that we're building. It is
it's
fun.
not serious.
Yeah.
I mean, we take it seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously in it. We're there because we want to improve, but we want to enjoy it. It's not meant to be arduous.
Yeah.
It's
That was another one of Ralph Smedley's quotes. Learning happens in moments of enjoyment. So we want every meeting to be fun.
And it is fun. I can attest to that. I used to go to a club for Toastmasters called I'll Drink to That, and I was clean and sober then too. I didn't drink or anything, and not everybody did either, but it was in a bar, and it was upstairs, and the laughter that came from our room, and we had so much fun. We're excited. We're excited when somebody does something and they do it and they're good, and we're like, wow, like you did that. And we laugh because it's just the camaraderie of it. And
you
it's
never
making
know
me
what
get
you're going to
really
hear.
back. Like I can't wait to have it at the meeting space again. Not just for you guys. If you guys want to come and join us, please do. But for me, I mean, like it's just do all that, to have fun with that, you know, to practice speaking and crutch word. But
See, I
see, I'm
wasn't even
smiling.
listening.
I'm not. It's these are things that they're crutch words because we've used them so much. It's autopilot. So it's not something bad about you. It's something that you've been using it, you
Yeah.
know, and you want to be able to straighten it out, especially also because I'm from New York and we use a lot of that anyway. So,
She's from New York City. I'm from New York
yeah,
State.
I'm from, I'm from New York, New York. Yeah. Um, so, so now you've been doing it for 5 years, you said?
Yeah, I think so. 2016, I moved here, maybe 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, you wouldn't have come on a show like this.
No, I hated
And
to
you
see
have
myself
your
on
own
video.
podcast now.
I do.
What's your podcast called?
Well, I just do one for Toastmasters because I
Okay.
have a page, Toastmaster Nadia. So I'll put out leadership tools for a lot of people that are
Oh,
taking
okay.
leadership positions. But I don't do it that consistently. That's another thing I have to work on. So yeah, I do have one for Toastmasters that I'm starting to grow.
And so that's the universe pulling her into the podcast world. Because next she just comes la 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 to just set up an event at the meeting space, and next thing you know, oh yes, let's do a show. We have to do a show on this topic. Okay, very cool. And so how would you say if you were speaking to people who, you know, were new and they wanted to know how to get involved in a Toastmaster meeting, to go to it, what's expected, what happens when you go to a Toastmaster meeting, from the moment that they come in and they're a complete newbie to the process of whether or not they join, how much it costs, and what the process is, the book that they get, if they get a book anymore. And because they used to, is that a book? It was a book, and stuff like that. So, because I remember the process when I went, and I went over a decade ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell us.
Probably not much has changed since when you started. If you are anywhere in the world, because we are international, you can always go to toastmasters.org and find a club. And so there's criteria. What day of the week do you want? What time of day do you want? You can find an association that works for you. But the great thing about post-pandemic is a lot of clubs are on Zoom. So you literally can say, oh, I want to visit a club in Thailand from my couch. And you can now. So
Is it easier? Is it easier to give a speech on Zoom? I feel like it would be easier for me to
I
give a
feel like
speech
it
on
is
Zoom.
because I'm naturally a recluse.
Yeah.
So going indoors was great for me. But there are people who love a stage. There are people who left Toastmasters for a while until it went back in person because they didn't like Zoom. But I think
I
it
feel like
also
it would
depends
maybe
on.
it would maybe feed my like, oh, I get to do this behind,
I
in
think
my
it works
pajamas
on
again.
different things. Like if you work in a corporation and you now have meetings on Zoom, you need to know how to present well on video.
Oh.
Or if you're doing online conferences because you're getting booked and a lot of conferences are still online, then you need to know how to
Oh, how
present,
interesting.
manage your PowerPoint, how to scan the room, scan the chat, make sure you're not ignoring anyone. So it works on those. But then if you are a motivational speaker or you want to do a TEDx, which many people from Toastmasters do, then it helps you to either stay within that red circle or work a stage, or it does those. So it's feeding different tools and giving you different resources.
How
But
interesting.
I just like to be in the house.
Kind of funny. It's a funny thing because when I went to do Toastmasters, when we had to do PowerPoints and set things up, I didn't. And I did multimedia
I
production.
used to ignore that challenge.
Yeah,
So I'm like, I
I
don't
was
want to
like-
fiddle with this
I actually
technology.
got the oak tag, which is a New York word. I don't know what you guys call it. The white cardboard paper.
Oh, like the flip charts and things.
And I would make it. I would
Oh.
draw it with a marker. I was like, I don't want to speak and have to control this thing at the same time. It's not. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So you could. Oh, what an interesting added bonus to learn to learn
Because
to
you
use
never
Zoom.
know when that might need to come in handy. Like there's sometimes when I go to an event and I can see that they're not managing it the best because they don't know Zoom as well. And I'm like, I've got it. Make me host. You just talk. We'll figure out the rest. So yeah, it does allow you to hone different skills. But once you go into a club, and I do tell people to try several, every club has its own personality because it's made up of different people. So some have a theme, some just have different personalities. So under that umbrella, every meeting can feel totally different. You shouldn't be forced to do anything the first time, but they might ask you if you want to do a table topics question, which is just a
really
random
quick.
question. Yeah, it's 1 to 2 minutes. Nobody knows what the question is that's going to be asked.
Right.
And it just gets you in the practice of speaking off the cuff, like you would for a job interview, a networking event, speed dating, which is probably something I need to try. You kind of mentioned that a while ago. I was like, I need
Speed
to do
dating,
that.
yeah. Oh God, get to the point about what you're looking for, what you're about. And then
Exactly.
next.
It's all table topics.
Do you know what else I just realized is that, when you have to describe what you do for a living, when you meet somebody in networking or anywhere and they go, well, so what do you do for a living? I've had to come up, I had to hone in an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
And I learned how to get to the point in Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Which, getting to the point, I'm a Gemini. I could be pretty verbose. That was probably one of my biggest challenges. Was I like to tell a story, give you the directions, tell you the scenery, and then get to the point. And I had to learn how to truncate that. And in this amount of time, be able to do that. And if you're somebody who tends to go over in your share, or somebody gives you 30 minutes to speak and you're at 45 minutes going, I don't understand why I didn't even get to the thing I wanted to talk about. Maybe you're sharing about your past and you're not sharing about your recovery so much. Then Toastmasters can help you with that too. Yes. It'll help you get more aware of your time and your structure and be able to kind of like outline even, by this point I should be at this point, etc. like that.
Yeah.
So there's so many tools that are coming back to me.
Oh my gosh, she's like a pro.
Yeah.
It never left you.
I loved it. I loved it. I did it for years. It helped me so much, and I am going to do it again. And we're going to have it at the meeting space because I have this yes to do it. Carlos and I were pretty much through the roof when we were talking to a friend of ours, and we're like, "Oh my God, yes, we should do this! Oh my God, yeah. Why are we not doing this? This is crazy!" And then next thing you know, and then one thing led to another, and then I meet you, and so I know God's like fast tracking this.
Wow.
Probably because He wants me to stop saying and like, because it's all about me. Okay, so now somebody's there, they're curious, they're interested. Now they go to their first meeting and they see other people speaking. They don't get to critique because they're not a member yet.
Well, it depends. My home club, which is online, it's called Jackpot Speakers. We meet on Sundays. Yes, we're diehard. There's club meetings every day of the week. We invite guests to give feedback to our speakers because every perspective is important. And we're not just in the bubble of Toastmasters to stay in Toastmasters. When people get up to speak, they're either giving the speech at their job or giving a work presentation, or they're taking it somewhere outside. And they need to know, what message are you getting? Did the emotion land? And everybody can give you that feedback.
Interesting.
So it depends on the club, but some clubs do let guests participate in that way because it's valuable.
And so when someone wants to join now, what's the process of that?
It's a quick application that you fill out. We take just about everybody.
So when I went to, I'll drink to that, they would make you leave the room.
Yeah, they do.
And then they would act like it's this big deal and that there's a risk that you're not going to be accepted.
Right.
And so it was this whole thing. And then I'd be standing out in the hallway going,
what are they saying about me?
I think they're going to accept me. I don't really understand what's happening here, but like crazy. So
I would say 99.9% of the time people get accepted. But if
somebody's not
an issue with someone before, or you've come and you've been combative, they might say, maybe this is not the personality for our club. Maybe we should suggest another club for you. That happens.
It's kind of the same thing as recovery. Like recovery, nobody's going to tell you, like, you say you're a member if you say you are. They're not going to kick you out. However, if you're combative and you're threatening somebody's safety, then they'll escalate it. They'll, at the meeting space, they'll ask me to step in, and if it's something that's pretty egregious, I will have to ban them. Yeah. And then sometimes even police will get involved. Oh, yeah. Because if somebody is really, really not a team player, then for the greater good, it's not a fit. But so like 99% with Toastmasters, 99% with all the other things in recovery, like you're good. Yeah. So don't worry about it when they ask you to leave the room. You're good.
You're probably good. And it's about $10 a month. So we take duels twice a year at the end of September and the end of March. So normally you're paying $60, and then your club may have its own dues just to help the meeting run, either for meeting space or Zoom fees or whatever they need the money for. So no more than $75 each 6 months you should be paying, I would guess.
And then sometimes some of them they'll say if we're at a place like the one that I was at, they said please buy dinner or something here, to support, because Toastmasters doesn't usually have a lot of money to pay a lot of rent to places, and so sometimes there's like more of a symbiotic relationship, and then having it at the meeting space, if the Toastmasters doesn't pay for itself in rent, which it probably won't, or whatever, we'll probably pass a basket as well, just to make sure that we have like some sort of compensation for that. But the point is, it's like less expensive if you're thinking about putting $1 in a basket for a meeting, and you go whatever. But if you're going to Toastmasters and it's $10 for the month, what you get, I mean, what a deal.
Yeah, you get the coaching, you get the resources, you get that immediate feedback on your speeches so that you immediately grow, and you get the international aspect of it. So I literally, when I go on vacation, I look for a Toastmasters meeting and go and visit a club.
So when you're a member of one and you go to another
one,
one,
visit other ones.
Do they let you do all the things because you are a member of Toastmasters?
Oftentimes they will. Like if they're short on people to fill a role and they know that you're an experienced Toastmasters, you're like, oh, I don't mind evaluating. People just jump in and help, because that's what we do.
Oh, I didn't know
You might
that.
not always be able to give a speech, but you might be able to fill another role.
How interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that. Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. It's like joining a gym and then you can go everywhere.
Pretty much.
That's really cool. Wow.
And this episode
is really, really good and helpful. And I love illuminating tools that people could use to help that maybe they're not even aware of. Like there's so many things in this world that we could do. This world has a lot of people in it, whether they're in recovery or not, that want to grow and be supportive and help each other. And Toastmasters is a perfect example of a very inclusive, open, and welcoming environment to polish your act and be able to learn how to work with other people, and there's so many tools. And so thank you so much, Nadia.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful that we did this, and we will post information on themeetingspace.com, letting people know when Toastmasters starts, and you can call the store as well, and come join us if you're interested as well. We have to start with 20 people to make a charter, and I think we're at 10 so far. And so we're halfway there. And I'm sure that, there's so many people in recovery who have gone to Toastmasters, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even know until I would start talking to people and like, oh, Toastmasters, I did that.
Oh,
no
nice.
way. I would do it again. Really? Oh my God, that's so cool. You just don't know, because you don't necessarily hear about people's lives outside of what they're doing in recovery. So, yeah. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real Recovery Show. And yeah, I'm just full of gratitude today. So thank you. And I hope you got something out of this, and we'll see you next week.